Joining us now, former Department of State Arab-Israeli negotiator and Carnegie Endowment for International Peace Senior Fellow Aaron David Miller. The fact that polio is now a problem in Gaza is just awful. But that Hamas and Israel are able to come to terms for a short-term ceasefire to get this vaccination done, or at least to try to, given the circumstance. Does that give you any hope that they can come to an agreement on the broader war?
You know, every time we speak, Katie, things are having me. The situation just gets worse before it gets worse. Although I have to say, if in fact this can be pulled off, that would be 9 days of relative quiet sector by sector. And it's an extraordinarily complex and potentially dangerous operation. I mean, we're talking 2,700 medical personnel distributing this vaccine in areas that had been free fire zones. It's going to require extraordinary discipline and coordination. And yes, maybe it is a good sign. I think it's reasonable. I mean, again, negotiators have hope for progress. They're back at it again. I believe from the beginning that it is possible for Israel and Hamas to sign an agreement that would allow the first phase of a three-phase ceasefire plan to take effect. But it's going to be very difficult to get beyond the first phase, which requires limited exchange of hostages for an asymmetrical number of Palestinian prisoners, many with Israeli blood on their hands, and a 6-week ceasefire. If they could get that, maybe, just maybe, it would create a foundation on which to build to look ahead toward the cessation and the permanent end of this war. But again, if by September 15 you could get this, it'd be a minor miracle and wonderful news for the hostages, their families, and certainly for the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza.
I can hear in your voice the exhaustion of just having to try to figure this out and to come on and talk to me about it, you know, every week or so. The two chief negotiators here, I mean, you have the people at the table, but the two people who are really going to say yes or no, Yahya Sinwar and Benjamin Netanyahu, can these two men, do they want to come to an agreement?
I mean, that's the core question. My experience with Arab-Israeli negotiations, these are not typical traditional negotiations. Primary Palestinian decision maker is ensconced in a tunnel somewhere, most likely surrounded or near proximity to hostages. And Benjamin Netanyahu is presiding over a very coherent and cohesive coalition, which shows no signs of fracturing. When negotiations close, it is usually, almost always, because the advantages of doing the deal outweigh the disadvantages of not. There is urgency. And lo, these many months, I think it's sad, it's a tragedy for both peoples, that neither Sinwar nor Netanyahu have felt the kind of urgency required. Maybe, again, maybe, you could get them to agree to phase one. But beyond that, Hamas is going to continue to hold the hostages, male, civilian and military hostages, for a permanent cessation of hostilities and Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. I don't think the Netanyahu government would agree to that. But first things first, let's do this polio vaccination program, see if that holds. The negotiators will be at it still, maybe a phase one deal, and then maybe a foundation on which to build. To finally, after a year, October 7, a year of this war could end.
Yeah, you know, the urgency, you're talking about not having the urgency. I wonder what could possibly be more urgent than the situation that we're seeing, especially in Gaza, with polio now a factor in that country. A 10-month-old, 11-month-old who's come down with polio is going to be paralyzed in one of his legs, having to vaccinate that many children. I can ask this question both ways. I'll start it this way. Is it clear how many Gazans Sinwar is willing to sacrifice to keep going with this war?
Look, he served 20 years in an Israeli jail. He speaks fluent Hebrew. He's interacted with Israelis. He knows exactly what the consequences would have been of what the October 7 plan was, to inflict as much cruelty and pain on military and civilians as possible, to demonstrate that Hamas is the centerpiece, not Abbas, not Fatah, Hamas is the centerpiece of the liberation of Palestine. He knew exactly what the Israelis were going to do. So the answer is cynically, cruelly, he was prepared to expend the lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and to essentially condemn them to a future, which even if you got an agreement is going to be incredibly bleak, given the amount of psychological trauma, let alone the humanitarian catastrophe and the challenges of physical reconstruction. Benjamin Netanyahu, and I don't want to compare Netanyahu and Hamas, but in this respect, I think it's true. The organizing premise of his world now is to maintain himself in power in an effort to avoid conviction or a plea deal for the 3 counts of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust with which he's been charged 4 years running now in front of 3 judges in the Jerusalem District Court. Sinwar is concerned about his survival and probably believes somehow he will survive this. And Benjamin Netanyahu cannot sacrifice power for his own personal and political future. And it shows the power and the tragedy of leaders who are more concerned about their own personal futures than the well-being and welfare of their respective countries and populations. And if this is ever going to end, if it's ever going to end, you're going to need leaders both on the Palestinian and Israeli side that are masters of their politics, persuaded that for their own reasons, largely tethered to the futures of their respective people, to come to some agreement, and we don't have those leaders. Sorry,
You also,
critical.
not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, you also need them to be masters at not just persuading the politics, but persuading the people to lay aside their arms and to put aside the anger and resentment that is built for so many decades now, and to try to live amongst each other. You're going to need some incredibly charismatic leaders who have the influence to convince enough people on both sides that this is enough, that they need to try to live peacefully together, and that is a tall task.
And leaders with tremendous courage, Sadat and Rabin, paid for their lives with both of their peacekeepers.
Exactly. Aaron David Miller, thank you as always.